The stench of rotting garbage filled my lungs as I plunged my hands into another torn bag, my fingers sifting through cold leftovers and soggy papers. I was starving, and the alley behind the diner was my last hope for something edible tonight. Then I heard his voice, sharp, familiar, cutting through the dusk like a blade. "Elliot, is that you?" I froze, my heart slamming against my ribs. That voice. It hadn't changed in 10 years. Still smooth and commanding, but now it carried the weight of power. I turned slowly, my dirty hands trembling, and there he was, Nathaniel Brooks, my ex, standing in a tailored suit, his polished shoes glinting under the street lamp. The man I'd loved, the man I'd lost, was now the mayor of New York City, staring at me like I was a ghost. 10 years ago, we were just two kids in love, sneaking kisses in the back of a Brooklyn dive bar, dreaming of a future where we could be ourselves without fear. I was 25, a scrappy artist with paint-stained fingers, and Nathaniel was a law student with big plans and bigger ideals. We'd lie awake at night, whispering about a world where we could walk hand in hand, free from judgment. But the world wasn't kind to two gay men in love. Not then. And Nathaniel's family owed money. Older prejudices made sure we didn't last. They called me a distraction, a nobody. They offered him a choice, me or his future. He chose the future. Now, here I was, 35 and broken, digging through trash to survive, while Nathaniel stood tall, his face plastered on campaign posters across the city. The irony burned worse than the hunger in my gut. "What happened to you?" he asked, his voice softer now, almost tender. I wanted to scream, to tell him he happened to me, but the words stuck in my throat. Instead, I wiped my hands on my threadbare jacket and stood, trying to salvage some shred of dignity. "Life," I muttered, avoiding his eyes. "It happens." His gaze lingered, heavy with something I couldn't name, guilt, maybe, or pity. I hated both. He stepped closer, and I caught the faint scent of his cologne, the same one he wore back then. My chest ached with memories I'd buried deep. "Elliot, let me help you," he said, reaching out. I flinched, stepping back. Help. From him. The man who walked away when I needed him most. I wanted to laugh, but it came out as a choke. "I don't need your charity, Mr. Mayor." His jaw tightened, and for a moment, I saw the old Nathaniel, the one who'd fight for what he believed in. But that man was gone, replaced by this polished politician. The alley felt smaller, the walls closing in as we stood there, two strangers bound by a past we couldn't escape. I thought of the nights I'd spent hating him, hating myself, wondering where it all went wrong. I'd been an artist once, full of hope, but the city had chewed me up, evictions, rejections, a string of bad choices. Now I was just another shadow in New York's underbelly, invisible to everyone except, apparently, him. He pulled out his wallet, and my stomach twisted. "Don't," I snapped, my voice sharper than I meant. "I'm not your redemption story." His hand paused, and something flickered in his eyes, pain. Maybe. Or regret. "This isn't about redemption," he said quietly. "It's about you." But I didn't believe him. Not anymore. A car horn blared from the street, breaking the moment. His driver, probably, waiting to whisk him back to his perfect life. "I have to go," he said, but he didn't move. Neither did I. The air between us crackled with everything we hadn't said in a decade. Then he reached into his pocket, pulled out a card, and pressed it into my hand. "Call me, Elliot. Please." I stared at the card. His name embossed in gold, Nathaniel Brooks, Mayor of New York City. I wanted to tear it up, to throw it in his face, but my fingers closed around it instead. He turned and walked away, his silhouette disappearing into the city's glow. I stood there, alone again, the card burning a hole in my palm. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in my tiny, freezing apartment, staring at the card, replaying every moment of our past. The way he'd laugh when I got paint on my nose. The way he'd hold me when the world felt too heavy. The way he'd looked at me tonight, like he still cared. But caring wasn't enough back then, and it wouldn't be now. I didn't call him. Not the next day, or the day after. But I kept the card, tucked it into my wallet like a secret I wasn't ready to face. New York moved on around me, a city of 8 million stories, and mine felt like it was unraveling. I went back to the alley, to the soup kitchens, to the life I'd been living. But something had shifted. Nathaniel's reappearance was a spark, and I wasn't sure if it would light a fire or burn me to ash. By the end of the week, I saw his face again, not in person, but on a TV screen in a pawn shop window. He was giving a speech about affordable housing, promising to lift up the city's forgotten. I laughed bitterly. Forgotten, like me. But as I watched, I noticed something in his eyes, a flicker of the man I used to know. And I wondered, just for a moment, if he meant it. The city never sleeps, but it doesn't wait for you to catch up either. I spent the next few days dodging the cold, scavenging for food, and trying to shake Nathaniel's voice from my head. His card stayed in my wallet, a weight I couldn't ignore, like a pebble in my shoe. I told myself I didn't need him, didn't want him, but every time I passed a campaign poster with his face, my resolve cracked a little more. One morning, I found myself outside a community center in Brooklyn, drawn by the promise of a free meal. The place was crowded, filled with people like Meddard, hungry, invisible. I kept my head down, shuffling through the line, when I overheard 2 women talking about the mayor's new initiative. He's actually doing something, one said. Visiting shelters, pushing for funding. I snorted. Nathaniel, the savior of the downtrodden. It sounded like a campaign stunt. But then I saw him. Not on a poster or a screen, but in the flesh, walking through the center with an entourage of aides. He was shaking hands, listening to people, his face earnest. I ducked behind a pillar, my heart racing. What was he doing here? This wasn't his world anymore. I watched as he crouched to talk to a kid, maybe 10 years old, who was clutching a worn backpack. Nathaniel's smile was the same one he used to give me, warm and unguarded. It hurt to see. I should have left, but my feet wouldn't move. He spotted me before I could slip away, his eyes locking onto mine across the room. The crowd seemed to fade, and for a moment, it was just us again. He excused himself and walked over, his aides trailing like shadows. Elliot, he said, his voice low. You didn't call. Didn't think you meant it. I shot back, crossing my arms. He studied me, his gaze taking in my frayed coat, my unshaven face. I hated how exposed I felt. I meant it, he said. I want to help. There it was again. That word help. It stung like a slap. I'm not your project, I said, my voice sharper than I intended. He flinched, but he didn't back down. This isn't about fixing you, he said. It's about making things right. I laughed. A hollow sound. Right. You think you can just waltz back in and make up for 10 years. His face tightened, and I saw the guilt there, raw and real. I know I hurt you, he said quietly. I've regretted it every day. His words hit like a punch. I wanted to believe him, but trust was a luxury I couldn't afford. I turned to leave, but he grabbed my arm, not hard, just enough to stop me. Please, he said. Let me at least get you a meal. No strings. I hesitated, my pride warring with my hunger. Hunger won. We sat at a corner table, away from his aides, with trays of lukewarm soup and stale bread. It was surreal, eating across from the mayor, like we were back in our old apartment sharing takeout. He didn't push, didn't ask questions. He just sat there, watching me eat, his silence louder than any speech. Finally, I broke. "Why are you doing this?" I asked. "Why now?" He leaned back, his eyes distant. "Because I see you in every face out here," he said. "Every person I'm trying to help. I see you. I can't change the past, but I can do something now." I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to hate him, to keep hating him, but another part, the part that still remembered his touch, his laugh, wanted to believe he was still the man I loved. After the meal, he offered me a ride to a shelter. I refused. I wasn't ready to owe him anything. But as I walked away, he called after me. "Elliot, I'm not giving up on you." I didn't turn back, but his words followed me into the night, heavy and warm, like a blanket I didn't deserve. The next day, I found a flyer tucked into my coat pocket, probably slipped there by one of his aides. It was for an art program at the community center, offering supplies and studio space to anyone who showed up. I almost threw it away, but something stopped me. Art had been my life once, before the world ground it out of me. I hadn't touched a brush in years, but the thought of it stirred something I thought was dead. I showed up at the center, half expecting it to be a trap, a way for Nathaniel to keep tabs on me. But he wasn't there. Just a group of misfits like me, painting and sketching under fluorescent lights. I picked up a pencil, my hand shaking, and started to draw. It was rough, clumsy, but it felt like breathing again. For the first time in years, I wasn't just surviving. I was creating. The art program became my anchor. Every Tuesday and Thursday, I'd show up at the community center, my hands steadier each time I held a brush. The other artists were a mixed bag. Some were homeless like me, others just lonely. But we all shared the same hunger for something more than survival. I didn't talk much, but I listened, and I painted. My first piece was a mess of dark lines and jagged shapes, a reflection of the chaos inside me. But it was mine. I kept waiting for Nathaniel to show up, to claim credit for saving me, but he stayed away. His absence was both a relief and a wound. I couldn't shake the memory of our lunch, the way he'd looked at Minute with pity, but with something deeper, something that scared me. I pushed it down, focusing on the canvas, but he was there in every stroke, every shadow. One night, after a long session, I stayed late to clean up. The center was quiet, the city's hum muffled by the walls. I was scrubbing paint off my hands when I heard footsteps. I turned, expecting the janitor, but it was Nathaniel. No suit this time, just jeans and a sweater, his hair slightly mussed. He looked like the man I used to know, not the mayor. "You're still here," he said, almost surprised. "You're not supposed to be," I replied, drying my hands. He smiled, a small, tired thing. "I wanted to see your work." He gestured to the canvas I'd left on the easel, a half-finished cityscape, all sharp angles and muted colors. I tensed, ready for judgment, but he just studied it, his head tilted. "It's powerful," he said finally. "Raw. Like you." I didn't know how to respond. Compliments felt like traps, but his voice was sincere. He sat on a stool, his hands clasped, and for a moment, we were just two guys in a room, not a mayor and a nobody. "Why are you really here?" I asked. He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Because I can't stop thinking about you," he said. I never could. My heart stuttered. I wanted to believe him, but the past was a wall between us, built from broken promises and years of silence. "You stopped thinking about me when you left," I said, my voice low. "You chose your family, your career. Don't rewrite history now." His face crumpled, and I saw the weight he carried, not just the city's, but mine, too. I was scared, he admitted. My parents threatened to cut me off, to ruin any chance I had at a future. I thought I was protecting you by leaving. I laughed, bitter and sharp. Protecting me? You destroyed me, Nathaniel. The words hung heavy, and he didn't look away. I know, he said, and I'll live with that forever. We stood there, the air thick with regret. I wanted to hate him, but hate was too simple. What I felt was messy love, anger, longing, all tangled together. He stepped closer, and I didn't move away. Let me make it right, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Not with money or power. Just, let me be here. I didn't answer. I couldn't. But I didn't leave, either. We sat in silence, watching the city lights flicker through the window, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel alone. It scared me more than the hunger, more than the cold, because hope was dangerous, and Nathaniel was its spark. The next week, I painted him. Not his face, but his essence, bold lines, warm colors, a figure standing tall against a fractured skyline. The other artists noticed, whispering about how my work had changed, how it had heart. I didn't tell them it was because of him. I wasn't ready to admit it to myself. But Nathaniel kept showing up not as the mayor, but as himself. He'd bring coffee, sit quietly while I worked, or tell stories about the city he was trying to save. I started to see the man behind the title, the one who still cared too much, who still carried the weight of our past. And slowly, against my better judgment, I started to let him in. Hope is a fragile thing, like a canvas stretched too tight, one wrong move, and it tears. I kept Nathaniel at arm's length, letting him into my world in small doses, coffee here, a conversation there. But every time he left, I felt the ache of his absence, sharper now than it had been in years. I hated how much I wanted him near, how much I wanted to believe he'd changed. The art program was gaining attention, and so was I. One of the organizers, a woman named Clara with a sharp eye for talent, pulled me aside one day. Your work's got something special, Elliot, she said. There's a gallery show next month. I want you in it. I stared at her, stunned. A gallery? Me? The guy who'd been eating out of dumpsters. I mumbled a thank you, but my mind was reeling. That night, I told Nathaniel. We were sitting on a bench outside the center, the city buzzing around us. He grinned, his eyes lighting up. That's incredible, he said. You're incredible. I shrugged, uncomfortable with the praise. It's just a local show, I said. Not exactly the Met. He leaned closer, his voice earnest. It's a start. You're finding your way back. Back. The word stung. Back to what? The artist I was before he left. The man I was before life broke me. I didn't know if that person still existed. But Nathaniel's belief in me was a lifeline, and I clung to it, even as I fought it. You don't get to take credit for this, I said, half joking, half serious. He laughed, but there was sadness in it. I wouldn't dare, he said. This is all you. The gallery show became my focus. I poured everything into my pieces: grief, anger, hope, love. Each canvas was a piece of me, raw and unfiltered. Nathaniel helped where he could, quietly, never pushing. He'd drop off supplies, connect me with people who could help, but he never made it feel like charity. It was just him, showing up. One night, as we walked through Central Park, the air crisp with fall, he stopped under a street lamp. I need to tell you something, he said, his voice tight. I braced myself, expecting another apology, but instead, he said, I'm coming out. Publicly. My breath caught. Nathaniel Brooks, the mayor, coming out as gay. In New York, where every move was scrutinized. Why now? I asked, my voice barely steady. Because I'm tired of hiding, he said. I hid who I was for too long, and it cost me you. I can't change that, but I can be honest now. His eyes searched mine, vulnerable in a way I hadn't seen since we were young. I wanted to tell him it was too late, that the world didn't work that way, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, I reached for his hand, just for a moment, and squeezed. The news broke the next day. Headlines screamed, Mayor Brooks announces he's gay in bold speech. The city erupted, some cheered. Others jeered. I watched it unfold from the community center, my stomach in knots. Nathaniel was risking everything: his career, his reputation, his family's approval. For what? For truth. For me. I didn't know, but it shook me to my core. The gallery show was a week away, and I was a wreck. My paintings were ready, but I wasn't. The thought of standing in a room full of strangers, my soul bared on canvas, made me want to run. Nathaniel sensed it. He showed up at my tiny apartment, unannounced, with takeout and a bottle of cheap wine. You're going to be amazing, he said, pouring me a glass. And I'll be there, if you want me to be. I did. I didn't say it, but I did. We spent the night talking, laughing, remembering the good parts of us. For the first time, I let myself imagine a future where we weren't just a memory. But the world was still out there, waiting to judge us both, and I wasn't sure we were strong enough to face it. The gallery show was chaos wrapped in fairy lights. The small Brooklyn space was packed with hipsters, critics, and locals, all sipping wine and murmuring about my work. My paintings lined the walls, gritty cityscapes, fractured portraits, each one a piece of my broken heart. I stood in the corner, clutching a glass I hadn't sipped, feeling like an imposter in my borrowed blazer. Nathaniel was there, true to his word. He didn't hover, didn't make it about him, but his presence was a steadying force. I caught his eye across the room, and he gave me a small nod, like he knew I was drowning and was throwing me a rope. Clara, the organizer, dragged me to the front to say a few words. My throat closed up, but I managed to mumble something about art being my way back to myself. The crowd clapped, and I felt like a fraud. Then a critic approached, a wiry man with glasses and a notepad. Your work's got guts, he said. It's like Basquiat with a broken heart. I didn't know whether to laugh or cry, so I just nodded. He scribbled something, then asked, What's your story? There's a lot of pain here. I froze. My story? Homelessness, heartbreak, a decade of regret. I glanced at Nathaniel, who was watching from a distance, and said, Just a guy trying to make sense of the world. The critic's review hit the next day, calling my work a raw, unflinching look at survival and redemption. It went viral, shared across X and local blogs. Suddenly, people knew my name. Galleries called, collectors emailed. It was overwhelming, exhilarating, terrifying. Nathaniel was the first person I wanted to tell, and that realization hit me hard. I was falling for him again, and it scared me to death. We met for coffee in a quiet diner, away from the city's noise. He was beaming, proud in a way that made my chest ache. You're doing it, Elliot, he said. You're taking your life back. I wanted to argue, to tell him it wasn't that simple, but his belief in me was infectious. For the first time, I let myself hope not just for us, but for me. But the world doesn't let you dream for long. Nathaniel's coming out had stirred up a storm. Protesters gathered outside City Hall, waving signs about family values. Pundits debated his fitness to lead. His approval ratings dipped, and I saw the strain in his eyes, the way his shoulders tensed when he thought no one was looking. I wanted to protect him, but I was barely holding myself together. One night, we walked along the Hudson, the city lights reflecting on the water. He was quiet, his hands in his pockets. Do you regret it? I asked. Coming out. He shook his head. No, but it's harder than I thought. I reached for his hand, and this time, I didn't let go. You're not alone, I said, and I meant it. The next day, I got a call from a gallery in Manhattan. They wanted a solo show, a big one. It was the kind of break I dreamed of as a kid, but now it felt like a test. Could I do this? Could I be more than the guy in the alley? Nathaniel believed I could, and for the first time, I started to believe it, too. But as my star rose, Nathaniel's world grew darker. A scandal broke leaked emails from his campaign, hinting at favors for donors. It wasn't true. I knew it in my bones. But the city didn't care. They wanted blood. And I wondered if our past, our connection, would be the next thing they'd use against him. The scandal clung to Nathaniel like damp rot. Every news channel, every post on X, dissected his every move. I watched him on TV, defending himself with that calm, measured tone, but I could see the cracks his eyes too tired, his smile too tight. I wanted to be there, to hold him like I used to, but I was still figuring out my own place in the world. My solo show was 3 weeks away, and I was drowning in paint and pressure. The gallery gave me a studio space, a real one with natural light and clean floors. It felt like a dream, but nightmares kept creeping in. What if I failed? What if the world saw me for what I was, a fraud who got lucky? Nathaniel's voice echoed in my head. You're incredible. I held on to it like a lifeline. He came by the studio one evening, looking like he hadn't slept in days. Rough week? I asked, trying to keep it light. He gave a half smile, collapsing onto a stool. You could say that. He watched me paint, his presence a quiet comfort. I was working on a new piece, a portrait of 2 figures under a street lamp, their hands almost touching. He didn't ask who they were, but I think he knew. I'm sorry, he said suddenly. I paused, my brush hovering. For what? He gestured vaguely, like he was trying to encompass everything. For dragging you into this. My mess. I set the brush down, wiping my hands. You didn't drag me anywhere, I said. I'm here because I want to be. His eyes softened, and for a moment, we were just us again. But the world wouldn't let us stay there. A reporter had sniffed out our connection, digging up old photos of us from college, grainy shots of 2 kids laughing, arms around each other. They splashed them across tabloids with headlines like Mayor's Secret Past with Homeless Artist. My stomach dropped when I saw it. My redemption story, my art, was now a footnote in his scandal. I called Nathaniel, panicked. This is my fault, I said. I should have stayed away. He cut me off, his voice firm. No, Elliot. This is on me. I chose to be open, and I'd do it again. He paused, then softer. I'd choose you again. My heart stopped. I wanted to believe him, but fear was louder. What if loving him cost him everything? The gallery show loomed, and I threw myself into my work, painting through the noise. Nathaniel kept his distance, giving me space, but he sent texts small, steady reminders that he was there. Proud of you. Can't wait to see your show. Each one chipped away at the wall I'd built around my heart. The night of the show arrived, and the gallery was a sea of faces, critics, collectors, curious strangers. My paintings glowed under the lights, each one a story of survival, love, loss. I saw Nathaniel in the crowd, his suit crisp but his eyes tired. He didn't approach, just watched, giving me this moment. When the reviews came in, they were glowing. A new voice in New York's art scene. One said, I felt like I was flying. But after the crowd thinned, Nathaniel found me. You did it, he said, his voice thick with emotion. I wanted to kiss him, to tell him I loved him, but the weight of the scandal held me back. Instead, I said, we need to talk. He nodded, like he'd been waiting for it. We left the gallery, stepping into the night, the city humming around us, unaware of the storm we were about to face. We walked to a quiet diner, the kind of place where the coffee's bad but the booths feel safe. Nathaniel looked drained, the city's weight on his shoulders. I slid into the seat across from him, my hands fidgeting. "This can't keep going," I said, my voice low. "The papers, the photos theory tearing you apart." He leaned back, his eyes searching mine. "You think I care about that more than you?" I swallowed hard. "I think you should. You're the mayor, Nathaniel. You've got a city to run, people to help." I stopped, the words and nobody stuck in my throat. He reached across the table, his hand covering mine. "You're not just anything," he said fiercely. "You're everything I lost and everything I want back." My chest tightened. I wanted to believe him, to let myself fall. But the world was watching, and it was cruel. "They'll destroy you," I said. "And me with you." He shook his head. "Let them try. I'm done hiding." His voice was steady, but I saw the fear in his eyes, the same fear I felt. We were two men trying to love in a world that didn't always make room for us. The next day, he held a press conference, addressing the scandal head-on. I watched from my studio, my heart in my throat. He stood tall, his voice clear. "I'm gay," he said, no hesitation. "And I'm in love with someone who's been through hell and come out stronger. His name is Elliot, and he's the best man I know." My breath caught. He was claiming me, publicly, knowing the cost. The backlash was immediate. Protesters grew louder. Donors pulled funding, and his team scrambled to control the damage. But Nathaniel didn't waver. He called me that night, his voice tired but warm. "I meant every word," he said. I didn't know what to say, so I just whispered, "I love you." It was the first time I'd said it in 10 years, and it felt like coming home. We started meeting in secret, stealing moments in quiet corners of the city. A rooftop in Brooklyn, a park bench at dawn. Each time, I fell harder, but the fear never left. The city was a pressure cooker, and we were at its center. My art was selling now, galleries clamoring for more. But every interview asked about him, about us. I tried to keep it about the work, but the world wanted our story. One night, we were at his apartment, a rare moment of privacy. He cooked dinner, something simple, and we laughed like we used to. But as we sat on his couch, his phone buzzed with another threat, another headline. I saw the toll it was taking, the lines on his face. "Is it worth it?" I asked. He looked at me, his eyes fierce. "You're worth it," he said. "We're worth it." But the world had other plans. A week later, a new story broke, someone from Nathaniel's past, a former aide, claiming he'd known about the donor deals. It was a lie, but it stuck. His team urged him to step back, to save his career. I saw the doubt creep in, the way he stared out his window, lost in thought. I wondered if he'd choose his future again, like he did 10 years ago. I couldn't let him. Not this time. I started painting again, pouring my fear, my love, into every stroke. I was planning something big, something that would show the world who we were. But I didn't know if it would save us or break us for good. The city was a furnace, and we were burning. Nathaniel's career hung by a thread, the scandal growing uglier by the day. I painted through it. My studio a sanctuary, my next show a mission. I wanted to tell our story, not the headlines, not the lies, but the truth of us. Two men who loved, lost, and found each other again, against all odds. The show was set for a warehouse in Chelsea, a raw space that matched my work. I called it Reclaimed, a series of paintings about survival, love, redemption. The centerpiece was a massive canvas, two figures under a street lamp, hands touching, the city a blur around them. It was us, unapologetic and real. I didn't tell Nathaniel. I wanted it to be a surprise. A gift. A stand. The night of the show, the warehouse was packed. Critics. Activists. Everyday New Yorkers, they all came. Nathaniel arrived late, slipping in quietly, his face drawn. He hadn't been sleeping, hadn't been himself. But when he saw the centerpiece, his eyes widened, and I saw the man I loved. Not the mayor, not the scandal, just him. I took the stage, my voice shaking but sure. This is about love, I said. Not just mine, but everyone's. The kind that fights, that survives, that refuses to hide. The crowd was silent, then erupted in applause. Nathaniel's eyes glistened, and I knew he understood. This was my way of fighting for us. For him. The reviews were electric. Reclaimed became a rallying cry, a symbol for those who'd been pushed to the margins. My art was everywhere. Newspapers, even a feature in a national magazine. But more than that, it shifted something in the city. People started talking about Nathaniel differently, not as a scandal, but as a man who dared to be honest. The scandal didn't vanish, but it lost its teeth. The AIDS lies unraveled under scrutiny, and Nathaniel's team found evidence clearing his name. His approval ratings climbed, slowly but steadily. He kept fighting, for housing, for equality, for the city he loved, and for me. We weren't perfect. We fought. We doubted. We carried scars. But we were together, openly now. No more hiding. One night, as we stood on his balcony overlooking the city, he took my hand. I don't know what's next, he said, but I know I want it with you. I kissed him. The city lights our witness. And for the first time, I believed we could make it. Years later, people still talked about Reclaimed. It inspired a movement, a call for love and truth in a city that often forgot both. Nathaniel served his term, then stepped back, choosing a quieter life. I kept painting, my work a testament to survival. We built a home together, not perfect, but ours. And sometimes, when the city was too loud, we'd walk to that alley where it all began. We'd stand under the street lamp, hands clasped, and remember the trash, the pain, the love that pulled us through. We were proof that even the broken could be reclaimed, that love could be enough.